and it quickly helps you pick up a seed, and then you just sow it.
I've made some mistakes before when trying to grow poppies, but I've learned a few things, and today I'm going to share with you some tips using some household items that can be really helpful to ensure some success. Hi, it's Steph. Welcome back to my channel. Poppies, they are a beautiful flower, and each year I set out to grow some, but I've had some mixed results. And if there's one thing that our gardens are great for, it's to teach us through trial and error. So over the last 4 years, I've learned quite a few things that I'm going to share with you today, as well as 4 mistakes to avoid to grow beautiful poppies. Poppies are often sown in the winter because they require a period of cold stratification. And what that means is that they need a period of time where they are exposed to freezing temperatures, which will help break down that hard coating on the poppy seed, which will improve germination rates. Now, the months that you want to sow your poppies are going to be when it's coldest where you live and where you have the most possibility of freezing temperatures. Here in the Northeast, it is usually between December and February, and I'm guessing that's the case in most places. So I am now in the second half of January, and I sowed my poppy seeds yesterday. Now, some important things that you want to make sure that you do when you sow poppy seeds is that they make contact with soil. In the past, I have haphazardly just thrown poppy seeds out thinking, you know, that's what nature does, right? They just scatter seeds everywhere with the breeze and it's fine. But what would happen inevitably is that they would land on thick mulch, a pile of leaves, or even in the middle of a plant. And then I wouldn't get great germination rates. So if you are going to sow poppies, you want to make sure it is in an area that you have exposed soil. Rake back any mulch or any leaves in the area that you want to sow your poppy seeds. And in the past, it has been difficult to know this, especially if you get a blanket of snow. So what I did was I had a bit of a light bulb moment this year. My husband has this stack of flags that are used for marking irrigation and sprinkler heads out on the lawn. And I thought, well, these are nice and bright. Even if we get snow and I pop them in the soil, I'll be able to tell where my exposed dirt is. And it worked beautifully. I went ahead and I set out some flags before we were due to get a coating of snow. And because they were bright orange, I still had my space outlined where I was going to drop my poppy seeds. These irrigation marking flags are really inexpensive and can be found at any hardware store. But if you don't have them handy, you can also use garden stakes or even bamboo stakes to just mark off the area where you have exposed soil. What's up with sowing poppies in the snow? Now, there's a few reasons for it. One is because the snow is white and poppy seeds are tiny, dark, and black, making them hard to see. So when you sow them on top of snow, you have a little bit more control about how spaced apart they are because you can see them versus dropping them on soil. And this will avoid getting clumps of poppies in the same place, which will then require thinning in the spring. Another reason is that the snow will keep the seeds moist, which will further help break down that hard exterior shell and aid in germination. Once the snow begins to melt, your seeds will make contact with the soil because they'll just be sitting on top of the soil, which is exactly what they need to germinate. Poppies need light to aid in germination. So you never want to plant your poppy seeds under the soil. You want to just lightly scatter them and leave them right on the surface. And here's the tip. Don't sow your poppy seeds on a windy day. I've done this before and I've lost my packet along with all the seeds. So if you are going to sow and it's a little bit windy out, you want to make sure that you get down low, wait until the gust of wind passes, and then go ahead and scatter your seeds. When it comes to growing poppies, you have a few options. You can direct sow them by sprinkling them on top of exposed soil, and you can also winter sow them. Now, I do quite a bit of winter sowing every year and I love it, but I have to say that I have not yet been successful with winter sown poppies. And I think the reason for that is because poppies have a reputation for being difficult to transplant. And I found that to be true because my poppies will germinate beautifully and I will end up with a container full of poppy seedlings. The problem comes in when I try to transplant them by pulling them apart and starting to thin them. When I plant them in the ground, I find that they never really root well. And that's problematic because poppies have a beautiful but large bloom, and so they are very top heavy. So if that plant doesn't root well, it will not be able to support the weight of that beautiful bloom and then the beautiful seed head. And they'll end up just sprawling on the ground and I won't get to enjoy them. So for that reason, winter sown poppies haven't worked well for me in the past. But let me know in the comments if you've had some success with winter sowing poppies. It still won't stop me from trying because I will be winter sowing them again this year in hopes that it works out a little bit better. Another way that you can grow poppies is by using seed trays or seed cells. And because poppy seeds are tiny, here's a short that I created that demonstrates a trick that I use to sow small seeds.
Got some seeds that you need to sow, but they're tiny and difficult to work with? Here's how you do it. Get yourself a white piece of paper and fold it in the middle and on each corner. You're making yourself a tray. Next, grab yourself either a tiny bowl or a little shot glass, put a little bit of water in it. And you need a toothpick. Spill your seeds in your crease. Wet the tip of your toothpick. And it quickly helps you pick up a seed. And then you just sow it.
You can also use biodegradable pots or toilet paper rolls, anything that will break down or that you can plant right into the soil so that you don't disturb their roots. In fact, last summer when I visited landscape designer Andrew Grossman, he had the most beautiful stand of poppies. They were so healthy looking, so lush and thick and nice and upright. And I asked him what his secret was to growing these beautiful poppies. And he told me that he grows them indoors, under grow lights in the winter, and he uses biodegradable pots. Poppies come in both annual varieties and perennial varieties. The annual varieties, you will start from seed this year, you'll get one bloom out of them and they will be done. But poppies are super easy to collect seed from and a lot of fun. They almost sound like a rattle. Once the seed head gets all dry, you will just put it on a piece of paper, spill out all your seeds, and that's how you would collect them. And they usually will last at least a year, sometimes two, and stay still fresh enough to germinate well. And the other varieties of poppies that you can get are perennial poppies. And I actually have two varieties in my garden. These are ones that will come back year after year where you don't have to start seeds each year for them. They are perennial. So the varieties that I have are the Royal Wedding, which is a really pretty white one with a dark black spot in the center. And then I also have the Princess Victoria Louise, which is a gorgeous salmon one. They get really large blooms. They're really tall and billowy and just beautiful out in the garden. But the varieties that I'll be trying to grow this year, so far I've ordered 7 varieties from Select Seeds, and I think they're beautiful and I'm really excited about them. They are the Peony Poppy Black, which is a really dark shade of purple, almost burgundy looking. The Peony Poppy Purple, which is a lighter shade of purple, but also that frilly type. This beauty I'm really excited about. I believe it is a new poppy variety by Select Seeds this year called Drama Queen, and it is gorgeous. It has a bunch of different color variations, so I can't wait to see that one. And this bread seed poppy called Imperial Pink, which is a really soft light pink and purple coloring. And Poppy Lilac Pom Pom, which I grew 2 seasons ago and it was stunning, so I had to have it again. It's a gorgeous light purple frilly poppy and it was so pretty. It went so well with all of my other perennials in my patio bed. I'll also be growing this poppy called Corn Poppy Flanders Poppy, which is a kind of red-orange color, and Poppy Lauren's Grape. And these two, I believe I'm going to try winter sowing. After I was done sowing my first pack of seeds, I was freezing. It was so cold outside, I could barely feel my fingers. And I still had 3 other packs of seeds that I wanted to sprinkle in that area because my goal was to have a mix of 4 different poppies growing in this patio bed. And then I remembered that I had kept an empty seasoning bottle in my seed starting supplies. And I often do this with random household items. I see it and I think that maybe I'll have a use for it in the garden and I'll just put it aside. And in fact, this time it did come in handy because when I went back in the basement, I took those other 3 packs of seeds that I still wanted to sow, and I was able to mix it into this seasoning bottle. The first thing that I did was make a tray to collect my seeds out of a piece of white paper. I folded in the center so that it'll make it easier for me to pour the seeds into my seasoning bottle. And so I took a little bit of each of the 3 varieties I had left, poured it onto my paper, and then poured it into the bottle. And I also went ahead and I taped one of the openings of the seasoning bottle because I don't know if you've ever done this before, but I've accidentally opened the wide mouth side and poured a bunch of seasoning into my food when I'm cooking. And I did not want to have that same issue with my seeds where I accidentally poured out all the seeds. So I taped that side down. I left the side open that would just allow me to sprinkle a few at a time into my hand before I put them out in the flower bed. But But another thing that you could also do is mix some sand with your seeds into your bottle to sprinkle out into the garden. And that will also help disperse the seeds a little bit more evenly versus just sowing a bunch in one spot. So maybe this tip can be useful to you. It made it really easy to mix a bunch of different seed varieties together and to scatter them out in the garden quickly and efficiently, especially when it was so cold out. And 4 mistakes to avoid to grow poppies successfully. Number 1, not giving them a cold treatment. Because poppy seeds need cold stratification in order to germinate, let's say you received your poppy seeds in the spring and you just go out in the garden and sprinkle them out without giving them a cold treatment. They won't germinate. They'll probably just sit there dormant, go through the winter where they will get the cold they need, and maybe they'll germinate next spring. But if you want poppies this spring, you do have to give them a cold treatment. So you can mimic that cold stratification by popping them in the freezer for a couple of days or in the refrigerator for a couple of weeks before you sow them out in the garden. Or you can sow them in the winter directly outdoors. Number 2, not pulling away the mulch or the leaves where you intend to sow your poppies. Poppy seeds need to make direct soil contact. So if you just throw them over mulch or leaves, they will not land on the soil and they won't germinate. So make sure that once you know where you're going to sow your poppy seeds, you pull away any mulch or leaves to ensure direct soil contact. Mistake number 3, covering over your poppy seeds with soil. Poppy seeds need light to germinate, which means you're just going to sprinkle them on top of the soil and leave them uncovered. And mistake number 4, not labeling or marking where you've sowed your poppy seeds. I have done this in the past, and when spring rolls around, inevitably I will forget where I planted them, and while doing spring cleanup, I will trample the seedlings in my bed or I will accidentally weed them out. So really important, don't forget to mark where you sow your poppy seeds. I hope that these tips will be helpful to you in growing some beautiful poppies this season, and I can't wait to hear about your successes in the comments. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.